So around 2011 it was my senior year of high school, and we decided to throw a kick-ass Christmas party at my buddy Frank's house. We got enough alcohol to make Charlie Sheen blush, and invited everyone we could. Now the appeal of Frank's house is that he lives about 5 miles away from anyone else in the middle of the woods in this amazing cabin. His dad created some sort of more efficient solar-powered lantern. I showed up to set shit up around 6 p.m. The news said that there would be a chance of snow flurries that evening. We weren't too worried, and nobody said they planned on canceling, so we went along setting everything up. Sometime around 7 a couple close friends showed up, including Maggie, this girl I was talking to at the time. I helped them get some cases of beer out of the back of a truck when I got a strange feeling. Everything was really quiet. Granted, it was late fall/early winter, so not many animals were out, but it was still a strange feeling. I looked around and saw a large shadow move in the woods. I didn't get a good look, but I was pretty freaked. About 20 seconds later the feeling of dread left and I shrugged everything off and took the booze back into the house. The party was picking up around 10 and I was starting to feel a bit buzzed. We had the music pumping and everything, but there was a weird feeling going around. Some people said they felt weird walking up Frank's driveway. You can only park 5 cars in his driveway. Everyone else had to park in front of the horse stables, at the bottom of a hill, and walk about 1/4 of a mile. No one really paid much attention after a few drinks though, so it didn't ruin the party. I was sitting in the hot tub talking to Maggie. Nibba had a hot tub in his basement in a room surrounded by windows. When I saw snow starting to fall fairly heavily, there was already a fine dusting of snow on the ground, and a few sober people started thinking if it was time to head out. I didn't think much of it. I planned on getting hammered and staying the night anyways, so I leaned back and popped open another Sam Adams. At 10:45 the power cut off. This obviously put quite the damper on the party. However, Frank had gas fireplaces for heat and light. Some people left, but there must have been around 30 people still partying. The bad news was that the hot tub didn't hot tub when the power was off, so I climbed out. No sooner had my feet hit the ground, when I saw this figure through one of the windows. The solar lamps still worked and cast a bit of light around the house. It moved through the snow like a hunched-over man, but it had a strange loping walk, something like an ostrich. It suddenly stopped and looked at me through the window, and I swear I could make out what looked like teeth before the thing turned away and bounded off on 4 legs. I looked over at Maggie, but she was too busy giggling and trying to get her friend Lindsay out of the tub. I shook it off as nothing more than a bear that still hadn't gone in for hibernation, and downed my newly opened beer. The party was still going pretty strong upstairs despite the lack of music, but Frank wasn't satisfied. He asked me and our friend Jonah to help him get the backup generator outside up and running. I told him to let me grab another beer to help kill the stupid brain cells so I would be more use. I won't lie, I was still a bit freaked out about the large thing I had seen, but without the generator there was no music, and without music I couldn't dance with my wiener pressed against Maggie's booty. So we set out for his dad's shed where the generator was. It was partially solar, partially gas powered, and as such needed to be turned on manually. The shed was about 50 yards away from the house so that it could provide heating to the horse stables. About halfway there, this fresh chill came over me. It wasn't the wind or the cold or the snow, because the alcohol was making me feel warm until then. No, this cold started at the base of my neck and worked its way down my spine. I looked around with the flashlight and I could swear I saw a set of eyes glowing near a bush next to the house. Jonah was looking around too, and seemed just as scared as I was, but Frank trudged on, probably too drunk to notice anything out of the ordinary. We were right next to the shed when I heard a sound that makes me get goosebumps thinking about it today. It sounded much like a rabbit screaming, but deeper, and with more of an edge to it, if you know what I mean. It sounded like it came from our right side, The house was behind us. To our left was a downward sloping hill leading to the fenced-in horse area. In front of us was the shed with trees behind it curving right and running parallel to the house and driveway. By the time I unfroze, Frank grabbed me and started dragging me towards the house. We made it up the steps. His house had a first level, with 2 floors above it, and a basement that was below ground facing the road, but above ground in the back, and back into the party. No one had heard the sound other than a couple making out on the porch. Someone had plugged an iPod into a boombox so there was music bumping, and that combined with people talking and the massive amounts of alcohol had resulted in ignorance of the scream from outside. Our entrance, however, was not ignored. Someone turned the music down and we explained what happened. The couple on the porch backed us up. Everyone just kind of blew it off. They hadn't heard the demon roar, so they weren't freaked out at all. It was around this time that I realized that Jonah was not in the house. I spun around and looked for him, but I couldn't see him. I asked Frank, and he said he was right behind us. This asshole Colby, Maggie's ex, started making fun of us, saying we were just afraid of the dark, or that we were too stupid to turn on the generator. Before I had a chance to defend myself, another scream pierced the night, the same demonic screech we heard outside, this time coming from behind us towards the shed. This time we all heard it. A bunch of people turned white, and some bitch screamed. Suddenly it was mass chaos. People were running everywhere, some upstairs, some out the front door. I just kind of stayed in the kitchen and tried to get my head together, but Mr. Sam Adams and his partner Admiral Nelson, we were young and it was cheap rum, made it pretty hard. The next 5 minutes seemed like an hour. We heard a car start, then a few more, but some people who ran outside streamed back into the house. Some cunt's Prius was stuck in the driveway and couldn't go up the hill, and someone else's truck got stuck in the grass a bit ahead of her, and the driveway was blocked. The other side had a creek running through it. After a few minutes another scream erupted, sounding close by. Again everyone freaked, but this time they ran upstairs, and I followed. We congregated in the main room on the second floor, which had a pool table, pinball machine, and other cool shit. There were around 15 people in the house at this time, but over the next few minutes about 10 more joined us. Some people elected to stay in their cars and try to get out, but the snow was getting deep, and the driveway hadn't been salted. It was Derek, a football teammate of mine, who finally got everyone to shut up. We started trying to figure out what was making the sound. We all thought it was a rabbit that was hurt, or maybe a coyote, but we all were thinking that it was something else, something beastly. I brought up the issue of Jonah. We had no idea where he was and he could be hurt and freezing. Derek and Frank elected to go with me to find him. I never volunteered, but as soon as Maggie said it was too dangerous and we shouldn't go, I knew I had to. Colby said he would go with us, probably for the same reason as me, and his friend Blake agreed to go also. Frank led the 4 of us across the hall to his dad's man cave and handed us some gear. He handed me a Remington 798, I think. It was a Remington hunting rifle, I know that, and it shot .30, Colby a Mossberg shotgun of some sort, Derek the same shotgun, and he and Blake each had pistols. Looking back, it was a bad idea, us drunk, scared, idiots' guns, but it made sense in the moment. We made our way off his back porch and towards the shack. Frank led the way with the shotgun, Colby and I were right behind him. Blake was halfway up Colby's ass and Derek was guarding our rear. Frank led us up to the shed and called out softly for Jonah. We didn't hear anything, so we started around to the other side of the shed. We heard a rustling to our right, and before I knew what happened, Blake had unloaded his fucking pistol. I immediately flipped my ever-loving shit and hit him in the face and gut. Colby grabbed me and told me to stop, but even he looked pissed. Frank grabbed Blake's pistol, made sure it was emptied and on safety and put it in his waistband. Blake was pissed we took his gun, but damn it, he could have shot Jonah if it had been him. Another scream ripped across the darkness, this time coming from the direction of the house. We started moving back around the shed, but we didn't see anything once we had the house in sight. Blake started walking back towards the house when we heard a new noise. It sounded like someone crying. The sobbing was coming from the stables, and we began making our way down the hill carefully. Suddenly the crying changed to a cackling laugh, something almost like a cute giggle, but like it was coming from a dog or a bear. I have never been so unnerved, not even the first time I heard the scream. I clutched the rifle so hard my hands started to hurt, but made my way down the hill, closer to the stables, closer to the laugh. It was at the bottom of the hill, about 20 yards from the stable, that I almost lost my courage. This smell erupted in my nostrils, something similar to the time a raccoon died in the locker room at school over the weekend in the middle of August. Colby immediately doubled over and puked his brains out. I won't lie, I got a smug feeling of satisfaction from it. In between retches from Colby, I heard the sobbing again. I pointed it out to Frank, but his will had finally broken. He told me to go check it out, he would make sure whatever was out there didn't sneak up behind me. I pleaded with Derek to come with me, he finally conceded, and followed me. The way the stable is set out, there are 4 gates on each side for the horses to come in, along with a main door that goes in between each row for the handler to feed them and shit like that. I made my way towards the main door, but once I got there it was already open. I shined my light inside. The only thing I could see was Jonah lying in the middle of the hallway between the stable's spread eagle, his head turned to the side. That was when I noticed movement to my left. Derek yelled. I probably did too, I don't remember. I turned towards the movement, and my light caught an arm covered in fur and snow, and what I am guessing is a leg. I didn't think, I just pulled the trigger, not even aiming. The boom brought me back to reality. I missed whatever that thing was, and immediately turned to run. However, I was still half drunk and it was snowing, so I slipped and fell hard on my side. I heard something grunt and run towards me, but whatever it was leaped over me and chased after Derek. The thing screamed the scream of Satan, and hit Derek hard. Now Derek is an all-conference linebacker. He went on to sit on the bench at UNC Chapel Hill, but he was a big motherfucker. This thing made him look small. It hit him and his feet left the ground. I gathered myself up and slid the bolt on my rifle back and forward, chambering another round. The behemoth looked at me as the clack of the bolt resonated through the quiet snow-covered valley. This is the part of the story where Derek says, I stood tall and shot the motherfucker twice center of mass, and hit it with the butt of my rifle, chasing it away, no problem. I let him tell that story, because it has gotten me laid. However, he was knocked out. Blake was halfway up the hill, and Frank and Colby were too drunk and tired to move from the other side of the stable. In reality, my finger slipped on the trigger and I hit the beast in what would be the shoulder of a human. I am not familiar with beastology, but I am going to presume this is also its shoulder. The damn thing stopped and released that fucking cackle we heard earlier. It moved into the light and I got my only good look at it, however short, and panic/drunk blinded that look was. It literally leaped the 8 or so yards between me and it. However, I threw myself at the ground and the damn thing soared over me. I heard it skid in the snow and I turned around. I slid the bolt again and put another round. However, I didn't even get a chance to aim. This time the thing swept its paw and hit me in the side. All air left my lungs, and I just kind of laid there. I could smell the putrid stench radiating above me to the right. I sensed it reaching towards me, but I can't be sure, since I was about to fucking pass out. I don't remember how, but I lifted the gun and just shot. Yet another lucky hit. I don't know where it hit, but I heard the damn scream. I must have been lying there for a few minutes, because by the time Derek and Frank reached me I had a bit of snow covering me. They helped me up. Colby stood to the side, trying to look tough and proud despite puking earlier. My sides were hurt, and I would later find I had a few bruised ribs. Derek had quite the bump on his head and a concussion, but he was fine. We slowly made our way back to the stable, to help Jonah. What I saw in the barn scars me. We usually leave this part out of the story, but I will tell you fellow/x/files because I know you will want to know. Jonah was lying in the center of the aisle, his leg was turned in an awkward direction, he was knocked out, and covered in blood, and there was a fucking bone lying next to him, and another next to it, and another leading into a stall. There we found the remains of a horse, ripped almost in half, blood lining the stall, bones thrown around. The other horses were silent. Frank was in tears as he ran to each stall. Of the 8 horses in the stable, 1 had been eaten completely, another was the one we found next to Jonah, 2 more had died with no markings, possibly of fright or shock or whatever. We decided to get Jonah and get the fuck out of there, back to the house. Colby and Frank lifted him between them as Derek and I led the way back. We arrived at the house, everyone was deathly quiet, fear had sobered us all up. The silence was broken as everyone asked us what was up. None of us could answer until Derek told the story. Someone grabbed a towel to clean us up, it was only then that I saw the filth on the side of my body the beast had hit. Derek was also covered, and Frank grabbed some clothes and we changed Jonah out of the blood-soaked rags he was wearing. Some people had called emergency services as soon as Blake went crazy with the gun, but we were quite a ways out, and the storm was insane, no one was prepared. It wasn't until 2 that afternoon that the police and ambulance showed up. East Tennessee actually, but my friend lives right on the border. I got over my fear of the woods from this last year, and there are some interesting things, especially in NC where some of the old growth forests are. The rest of the night/morning, it was about 1 by the time we came back, and near 2 by the time we were cleaned and the story was told, was a blur. Blake never came back to the cabin apparently, but no one had the balls to go back out there, not even his girlfriend or Colby told us to. I drank a bit to numb my ribs, and also to gain some fucking courage. We heard sounds in the woods by the cabin all night, but no more screams. It was around 5 in the morning when Jonah awoke. He was shaking and jittery, but he told us his story, told in the next post. After the scream by the shed, Jonah ran for the stable, it was the closest shelter he could see, and he was panicked. He thought Frank and I were right behind him, though we had made our way to the house. Halfway down the hill he slipped, breaking his leg. He had been knocked out in the fall, but was awakened by something dragging him. He only got a few glimpses, but said it looked like Satan fucked a gorilla, though he said he saw a snout like a horse or dog, and its feet seemed too small for its body, and its ears went straight up from its head. The thing dragged him into the barn, the horses went nuts, and started kicking and neighing. But the beast roared and they fell silent. The thing leapt over the stall door and slaughtered a horse, the others merely kept as far away as possible. Jonah lay in the corner of the stable crying. Every now and then he said the monster would look at him while eating. He couldn't really see much, the thing wouldn't really stay in direct light, and it would cry also, but much throatier and deeper. However, over the next few minutes it was almost a perfect imitation. Every now and then it would throw a bone at Jonah, and when it hit, the thing would do the cackle, each time sounding less like a demon and more like a girl. After it finished the first horse it went to the second and killed it as well, this time though it kept throwing the meat over to Jonah, but Jonah was freaking out. He heard gunshots and tried to crawl away, but the damn thing jumped at him, and the next thing he remembers is waking up on the couch. Hopefully I will finish in the next post. Everything about Jonah's story gives me chills, especially the part about it crying and laughing. We waited in the house, others streamed in throughout the morning as they abandoned their cars. It wasn't until 11 a.m. that Blake finally showed up. He was literally blue, and shivering. He would be treated for hypothermia, I think, but I didn't keep up with him much after that night. He wouldn't tell us what happened, but he kept saying, "It's still here," or, "It talks like me," or, "It knows my name." I do know he was treated in a mental hospital. Colby said he went nuts, and is afraid of trees. The police showed up around 2. They were skeptical of our story, and accused us of doing drugs. However, when we showed them the horses, they believed us partially. They ruled it out as a bear, and while we got a slap on the wrist for underage drinking, no one was charged. Derek, Jonah, Frank, Colby, Blake, and I were taken to the hospital. We talked to some forest rangers and a few other people, and while the rangers turned pale at our descriptions, they stuttered out that it was probably a bear, and then they left. I still don't know what was out there. It took me almost a year to work up the courage to go into the woods, but since then I have taken to hiking, camping, and a bit of urban exploration. I mean, after that night, there can't be anything scarier than that, right? I can find an image later of what it looked like, but for now, I can give you an idea. It was around 7 to 8 feet tall. Black/dark brown fur, could be wrong, I only really saw it in the dark. Very long arms, like standing up, its hands almost touched the ground. It had shortish legs, and Jonah describes its feet as too small for its body. It looked hunched over for the most part, so I couldn't get an outline of its head, but Jonah says it was something like a horse or dog snout. Jonah also said it had long ears on the top of its head. Frank says they were horns like the devil. Derek says it had a small tail like a bobcat or a rabbit, but he isn't sure.